He was just 12 years old. Not in his bed, not in a warm room, but curled up in the back seat of a broken-down car, parked behind a quiet grocery store while the world around him kept moving. People laughing, cars passing, lights glowing in warm homes. And him? Forgotten. The windows were fogged from the cold, his stomach empty, his hands shaking as he pulled a thin blanket closer, trying to fight the freezing night. Beside him, his mother lay weak, coughing softly, trying not to let him hear her pain. He closed his eyes, but sleep didn't come, because hunger doesn't let you sleep, pain doesn't let you rest, and reality doesn't let you escape. That night, something inside him broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, deep inside his heart. He turned his head, looked at his mother, and for the first time, he didn't feel like a child anymore. He felt responsible. Tears rolled down his face, but he wiped them quickly, because no one was coming to save them. No miracle, no help, no second chance. Just him and a life that was falling apart. And in that moment, in that cold, silent car, he made a promise. Not to the world, not to anyone else, but to himself. A promise so powerful, it would change everything. He whispered softly, almost like he was afraid to say it out loud. I will never live like this again. I will never let my mother suffer like this again. I don't care how hard it gets, I will never be this poor again. And that night, a poor boy didn't just cry, he was born again, as someone who refused to lose. His name was Ethan Cole, a name the world had never heard, a boy the world had never noticed. He didn't live in a house, he didn't even have a room. He lived in a car. An old, worn-out car, parked quietly behind a grocery store, in a corner where no one really looked. Not for a day, not for a week, but for months. Months of cold nights, endless hunger, and silent suffering. The car wasn't just small, it was suffocating. The seats were torn, the windows slightly cracked, and the air inside carried a heavy smell. Old clothes, damp blankets, and something deeper, the smell of struggle. Every night, Ethan would climb into the back seat, carefully so he wouldn't wake his mother. He would curl his body into a tight corner, pulling a thin, worn blanket over himself, trying to trap whatever little warmth he could. But the cold always found its way in. It wrapped around him like a reminder of where he was and what he didn't have. Beside him, his mother lay quietly. Her breathing was soft, but not peaceful. Sometimes she would cough, quickly covering her mouth, trying not to make a sound, because even in pain, she didn't want to worry him. Ethan would hear it anyway. He always did. But he never said anything, because he knew if he spoke, he might break. So instead, he would stare at the roof of the car, eyes open in the darkness, listening to the world outside. Cars passing, people laughing, doors closing, lives being lived, lives that felt so far away from his. And then there was the hunger. It wasn't just a feeling. It was a constant ache, a quiet pain twisting inside his stomach. Some nights it was so strong he would press his hand against his belly, as if trying to silence it, but it never stopped. Still, every night he would turn to his mother, forcing a small smile, and whisper, "Mom, I'm not hungry." A lie, a simple lie, but one he told with love. Because if she thought he was hungry, she wouldn't eat either, and he couldn't let that happen. But his stomach, it told the truth.
in soft growls, in restless movements, in the way sleep never came easily. His mother heard it. She always did. A mother always knows. But she never called him out, never said, "I know you're lying." Instead, she would just look at him with tired, loving eyes and smile. A soft, broken smile. The kind that hides pain. The kind that says everything without saying a word. Sometimes she would gently place her hand on his head, running her fingers through his hair, as if trying to comfort him, even when she was the one hurting. And in that moment, no matter how cold the night was, no matter how empty their stomachs were, there was still warmth. Because sometimes love isn't about fixing everything. Sometimes love is pretending everything is okay, just so the other person doesn't fall apart. And in that small, broken car, parked behind a place full of food they couldn't afford, a mother and her son fought their battles in silence, together.
One freezing night. The kind of night where the cold doesn't just touch your skin, it reaches your bones. The wind howled softly outside, shaking the old worn-out car, as if reminding them how fragile their world really was. Inside, it was dark, quiet, too quiet. Ethan lay curled up in the back seat, his thin blanket barely covering him, trying to fall asleep despite the hunger, despite the cold, despite everything. And then he heard it, a cough, soft at first, then again, stronger, sharper. He opened his eyes immediately. "Mom?" he whispered. No answer, just another cough. This time, worse. Ethan quickly sat up, his heart starting to race. He leaned closer to her, and what he saw terrified him. His mother was shaking, her body weak, her breathing uneven, heavy, like every breath was a struggle. Her hands cold, unnaturally cold. Ethan grabbed them instantly. "Mom, what's wrong?" His voice trembled, but she couldn't answer properly. Her lips moved, but no words came out. Just pain, raw, silent pain. Panic took over him. His mind raced, looking for a solution, any solution. But there was nothing. No money, no phone, no doctor, no one to call. Just a scared 12-year-old boy, alone in a dark parking lot, watching his mother suffer. "Mom, please say something." His voice cracked. His hands tightened around hers, as if holding on tighter could stop her from slipping away. Tears filled his eyes, but he tried to stay strong. He had to, because there was no one else. He looked around helplessly at the empty parking lot, at the distant lights of the grocery store, so close, yet so far from help. And in that moment, he felt completely powerless, like the world was moving and he was stuck, watching everything fall apart. He leaned closer to her, his forehead gently touching hers as tears rolled down his cheeks. "Please don't leave me." The words came out broken, barely a whisper, but filled with fear. Real fear, the kind that shakes your soul. For a moment, everything felt like it was slipping away. The cold, the silence, the pain, all closing in at once. Then slowly, very slowly, his mother opened her eyes, weak, tired, but still full of love. She looked at him, not with fear, but with something else. Strength, a quiet, powerful strength. Her trembling hand moved slightly, reaching for his face. She placed it gently on his cheek, wiping away his tears with her thumb. And with a soft, broken voice, barely audible, she whispered, "You're stronger than this life." Ethan froze. Those words, simple
but they hit him deeply. Stronger than this life? How? He felt small, broken, helpless, but in her eyes he saw belief. Even in her weakest moment, she believed in him more than he believed in himself, and that changed something deep inside him. That night, Ethan didn't sleep, not even for a second. He sat there, holding her hand, watching her breathe, praying silently, begging for her to be okay. But inside, something was happening, something powerful. The fear was turning into determination. The pain was turning into purpose. The helpless boy was disappearing, and in his place, someone new was being born, someone stronger, someone who refused to stay weak, someone who would fight no matter what it took. That night, Ethan didn't just cry, he changed.
The next morning, the night hadn't really ended. It had just faded into a cold, gray morning. The sky was pale, the air still freezing, and the world was waking up like nothing had happened. But for Ethan, everything had changed. He slowly opened his eyes, his body tired, his mind heavy, but his heart restless. He looked beside him. His mother was still there, breathing, weak but alive. Ethan let out a quiet breath, a small moment of relief, but the fear of last night was still inside him. He carefully stepped out of the car, the cold air hitting his face instantly. He rubbed his hands together, trying to warm them, but the cold wasn't just outside anymore. It was inside him, deep. He walked slowly toward a nearby public restroom, the kind people barely notice. Old, quiet, almost forgotten, just like him. He pushed the door open, the faint creak echoing in the silence. Inside, a cracked mirror hung on the wall, slightly broken, edges worn out, reflecting a distorted image. Ethan stepped closer. For a moment, he just stood there, looking, not moving, not blinking, just staring at his own reflection. And what he saw was a poor boy, messy hair, tired eyes, clothes that told a story of struggle, a face that had seen too much for someone so young. This was who he had become, or maybe who life had forced him to be. His lips pressed together, his jaw tightened slightly, and then his eyes changed, because behind that reflection, behind the weakness, behind the pain, there was something new, something stronger, something dangerous. Fire. Not anger, not sadness, but determination. Pure, unbreakable. The kind of fire that doesn't fade even in the darkest nights. He leaned a little closer to the mirror, his breath fogging the glass, and in a low voice, barely above a whisper, he spoke. "I'm done being this person." The words felt heavy, real, like they carried years of pain inside them. He swallowed hard, his eyes locked onto his reflection. "I'm done being weak. I'm done watching my mother suffer." His voice trembled for a second, but then it steadied, stronger now, clearer. "I will change our life." No hesitation, no doubt, just truth. That wasn't a dream, not hope, not something he wished for, because wishes are soft, wishes break, wishes fade. This was different. This was a decision, a line drawn inside his soul, a moment where he refused to stay the same. He stared at himself for a few more seconds, as if memorizing that face, that broken version of him, because deep down, he knew that boy in the mirror was about to disappear. Slowly, Ethan lifted his hand and wiped the fog off the mirror. His reflection became clearer, sharper, and for the first time, he didn't see weakness. He saw potential, a future, a version of himself that hadn't been built yet, but was waiting for him to fight, to struggle, to rise. He took a deep breath, straightened his posture slightly, and turned away, not as the same boy who walked in, but as someone new, someone who had nothing but was ready to build everything. Because that morning, in front of a broken mirror, a poor boy didn't just look at himself, he chose who he was going to become.
Ethan couldn't afford education, so he created his own. Every night, he sat in public libraries reading everything: business, money, success stories. While others were sleeping, Ethan was learning how to escape poverty.
One evening, a man at the diner watched him carefully. Not his clothes, not his situation, his mindset. "Why do you work so hard?" Ethan replied, "Because I don't want this life anymore." The man paused, then said, "Come work with me." That moment changed everything. Ethan entered a new world: business, opportunity, risk. He failed again and again, lost money, made mistakes, got rejected. But every failure taught him something, and slowly he got better, stronger, smarter.
After years of struggle, Ethan started his own small business. It wasn't big, it wasn't perfect, but it was his. Months passed, then one day, it worked. Customers came, money grew, opportunities opened. The boy who had nothing was finally building something. Years later, Ethan stood in front of a beautiful house, not as a dreamer, as the owner. Inside, his mother sat comfortably, healthy, smiling. He walked up to her, held her hand, and said, "We made it." Tears rolled down her face because she remembered the car, the hunger, the pain. The same boy who slept hungry at night became the man who feeds others during the day. If this story touched your heart, like this video, comment "Never give up," and subscribe to Hidden Tears, because some stories don't just tell emotions, they remind you. What would you do if you were in his place?